Good evening, mischievous mortals. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you are all feeling warm, well and happy this evening. I am much improved after my bout with the flu, thanks to some herbal medicine a friend whipped up for me. She is very talented, but she has asked me to warn inexperienced people about making their own medicine. When she was still a novice herbalist, she accidentally turned herself into a dog. The good news is that I have the first part of a 2-part series ready for you. The poem is based on a story I heard while visiting another universe, in a land called Kenjorda. The narrator of our tale is a first mate on a ship, sent to explore a distant land, chasing down rumors of precious gemstones and gold. He has since been in that land for several months, and whilst not finding what he wished to, he has discovered that the continent's inhabitants are much different from our own friends and neighbors. So dim your lights, fluff up your fluffy socks, and prepare to learn the story of the Purple Mountain Vampire. The Purple Mountain Vampire. The creature appeared out of the black darkness, around the fire where we sat wearily. We were a somber group, half lame and limping. 3 years ago, we had set out to sea, following rumors of an odd dusky country, where a strange people lived their heady days, beneath a bloody sun shining, and mined mountains, where white gems glowed ablaze. I was the second oldest of the young crew. Only the captain was older than me. The rest had barely stepped into their 20s. Sometimes I felt I ran a nursery, and yet they had borne a rough 6-month voyage, felt thirst and hunger without loud complaint, and even endured injuries to get here, with a patience that would have shamed a saint. So when 2 weary years ago, we sat down, with our possessions on the purple shore, we felt happiness and delight, the hope of gaining health, wealth, knowledge, language, and more. We also felt excitement at a new world, where men from our country had never trod, where new souls stared up at strange constellations and sang wild hymns towards a waiting God. You may not believe this, but we meant no harm. We had items to trade, thought not to steal. We hoped to learn new medicines and great skills, the hurts and horrors of our lands to heal. We had only a basic map of the land, around the coast and the Silver Inlet. After that, we'd follow the lay of the land and ask directions from people we met. We'd entered the woods with our heads held up high, but from that moment, all things had gone wrong. We'd traveled down valleys and up steep mountains, across deserts and swamps. We'd journeyed on. For 2 long years, we dealt with hurt and hunger. Sadly, in that time, 10 men had been slain. We'd not found riches or medical wonders. Now, at last, we were headed home again. In 9 days, a ship with our country's colors would weigh anchor on the same purple shore and the black sands where first we had disembarked. Next morning, it would turn for home once more. If we reached it before it lifted anchor, then it would carry our poor few away from this place that we had come so to detest. If we missed it, then we could only pray for a quick death. No other ships would come here, for soon our 2 countries would be at war. We might as well sit in the shallows and wait for blue sea snakes to drag us from the shore. We'd entered the mountains 2 dark days ago, but weather and landslides had slowed us down. We'd had an awful shock just the night before. We'd stopped to stock up at a little town that had been rich and full only weeks before. But when we arrived, no soft word was said. The place had been empty, ravaged and shattered. Its small buildings, peopled by rotting dead. What other horrors were there? I can't describe. But every throat had been torn by a beast. An animal, a monster or a demon, that had gone on upon their flesh to feast. There'd been too many bodies there to bury. So we'd said over them a simple prayer, then took whatever we could from the storerooms and tried to forget we'd ever been there. Since then, strangeness had abounded around us. Screams and strange laughter had filled up the night. The animals we'd hunted for our meals had now vanished from the woods. Thin figures, white, peered from between the trees, leering with cold eyes. Their whispers and soft cries peopled the dark. Sometimes we'd found strange figures carved into trees, as though monsters of old had made their mark. Shadows paced between the trees, shrieking laughter. We'd tended fires all night to keep them back, and posted guards to hold off the gray dire wolves that roamed the red slopes of the hills in packs. We'd kept our weapons primed, ready to defend, and still been woken by screams in the night. We'd prayed in morning light and in the evening, and sometimes feared that we would faint from fright. Still, we managed to keep the creatures away. Each night, we drew closer to the seashore. We wished only to gain the ship and then leave, never to see this vicious country more. So, it was with hung heads and pounding headaches. We sat around and stared into the fire. Near midnight, we heard soft footfalls approaching. For a moment, the nighttime noise grew higher, and then fell off and tumbled into silence. A shadow swept into the firelight. Briefly, the figure seemed to be a maiden. We stared at her in confusion and fright. Then her face changed, and we beheld a monster. A skeleton moving, twisted, and frail. You might have thought famine itself was walking, supported by a spine thin as a rail. It smiled its mouth, a sharp sickle moon shining. It nodded towards us, dipping its head. We could not speak. We could not move or defend. We were as still and silent as the dead. "Hello," it said. "It took some time to hunt you. You clearly did your best to outpace me. But here I am. I've joined you by your fireside. And that means you owe a blood gift to me. You see me as I am. I'm full of hunger. It has been long and long since I have fed upon the hot, sweet blood of living beings. I've slept in crypts and the graves of the dead. If I was greedy, I would destroy you all and live the next nights with my heart singing, my head upraised towards the moon in the sky, as I dance to the heavens' rapturous ringing. But I have watched you brave this strange continent, working together by day and by night. And though you are mortals, I now respect you. So murdering you all would not be right. Instead, I've appeared now, and I instruct you to decide which of your party you choose, and render them to me as my lawful prey. If you do so, then just one life you'll lose, and I'll move on to seek out other prey. But if you refuse me, I will take you all. You never will reach the ship that you seek for, and none will ever know what made you fall." What could we say? Scared whispers flew between us. Our eyes were wide, our voices tight with fear. My mind raced too. How could I save the young ones? I was the one supposed to lead them here and bring them home again as happy heroes. I'd failed in the second part already. The The least I could do was bring them back alive. Maybe I should offer the creature me, but I was not yet ready to lose my life. If there was something else that I could do, we'd guessed that strange creatures walked in the twilight, but not that they would speak as mortals do, or demand tribute. Sudden anger seized me. A violent tremor raced my body through. I leapt up, snatching from the fire a massive branch of wood that had not burned halfway through. I looked at the thing, and I barreled forward. With the fire held aloft, I did attack. I didn't think that my poor attempt would work. Surely, the monster would just shove me back onto the ground. But no, it reeled from the fire. When flames struck flesh, the creature screamed outright. I heard it crashing back into the tree line. It disappeared into the dark of night. We would have broken camp, but there was danger in descending slopes while the night was black. So we sat awake, each holding a lit branch, our backs to the fire, braced for an attack. As soon as dawn's light touched the radiant skies, we packed our things and hurried on again. We hoped to gain the bottom of the mountain before dark fell and blinded mortal men. Sadly, by the time my watch struck 10:30, we were still miles from the friendly foothills. The youngsters would have driven on regardless. But in the end, I defied all their wills. The risk was too great that we'd find a cliff edge, hidden in a blanket of velvet night, and tumble into a gorge or a river, or jaguar's cave, never to see the light. Exposed beneath the cavern of the night sky, we set our camp in silence, all afraid, all wondering if this was the night we'd die, and never in our native soil be laid. We were exhausted, but none of us could sleep. We watched the foliage and trunks of trees, wondering when the demon thing would appear. In the end, we began to tell stories, to distract from the awful sense of near doom. I spoke of my early days on the seas, the strange islands, the people that I had met, the jeweled sea snakes with their glowing bodies, the lands where lakes shone violet and not blue, where winter was hot and the summer snowed. I even told of the archipelago, where towns sat on water and all men rowed. I was describing the white feathered goddess, worshipped in parts of the far Orient, when I saw bright eyes glowing in the darkness. "Keep speaking," the thing said. "I will relent, and will not take a single life each night. That your words can keep me transfixed until dawn. Who knows, you may even reach your ship alive and find no family has cause to mourn. But if your stories can't hold my attention, if I judge them foolish, slow, unwieldy, then you must draw lots, and the weeping loser must surrender as a sacrifice to me. Do you consent to this?" Again, our words flew. A fatalistic conversation, sure. For if we refused now, the thing would slay us, and nobody would hear tell of us more. Yet, if we agreed, at least one would indeed be forced to join the creature in the night. We all quailed before the horrible notion, our minds and bodies paralyzed with fright. At last, they appointed me to tell the news. "We'll agree to your contract now," I said, "but with this caveat. When we at last lose, the duel stops. Just one of us ends dead. To the rest of us, you will give safe passage, right to the ship. You'll see us on the sea. Only then will you go back to hunting the poor souls of this, your natural country. Do we have an accord?" The creature stared at me a long time before it dipped its head. "Rest for tonight," it said, "and I will away Tomorrow, the best stories you must thread. And with bright dreams, grace my imagination. Remember, you'll be talking for your life. Then it was gone. We lay down on the hard ground and tried to sleep, despite our trembling strife. Next day, we walked again, and as we hiked on, each of us worked to recall the stories that we'd loved best in youth and early childhood, hoping that our lifetimes would increase. We'd gained the foothills. When next we came to rest, we hacked the grass and set a fire down. We wrapped ourselves in blankets, chilled by the wind, and stared at each other with worried frowns. The thing appeared in human form that evening. Her face was dusky, her eyes honey bright. Her skin was darker than ours, but it sparkled, with an odd glisten even in the night. Her body was slim, but perfectly rounded. No man alive would not have called her fair. And yet, something was unnerving about her. A feline predator glowed in her stare. "Good evening, mortals," she greeted us softly. "I have rested and am eager to see which of you will be chosen to assail me with your best song, fairest rhyme or story. Who have you chosen?" "I'll go first," I offered. "Go ahead then," she said. "I wait to see which of you has the talent of the old bards, and who was born to be a feast for me." So I began. The story I told that night was of a maiden born beneath the sea. She saved the life of a poor drowning sailor and came to love him so passionately that she made a deal with a witch to gain legs. The wicked crone would have devoured her soul, but the sailor took the mermaid to his priest. The man blessed her and made her a woman whole, saint and beloved by God. So the witch could not extract the dreadful price that she so craved. The maid and sailor married, and thereafter, many a struggling fisherman was saved by the girl's folks, who never ceased to love her. In time, peace was reached between those beneath the waves and those above. The story stretched through the night and ceased just on the point of breaking day. We paused, breath held, to hear the monster's judgment. She stood up tall and proudly dipped her head. "You have won the first battle tonight, mortal. You are not the one who I will see dead in my embrace. Tomorrow may be different. I'll retire now and let you flee away into the trees. But don't think you can lose me. I'll be with you again at close of day." Subscribe to become a delicious darling. Well, that's the end of part 1. What do you think? Nail biting enough for you? What should the first mate and his men do? Are you relieved that he managed to survive the vampire's challenge? Well, you can find out by joining us next week. Until then, if you have made it this far, please type the word purple in the comments. And then tell me what story you would choose if you had to select one for the vampire's challenge. As always, I would appreciate it if you'd click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to become an official delicious darling. I am off to the cinema tonight. I am going to see a new horror film. No, it isn't about vampires, although I enjoy movies like that. Right, I'd better go and get dressed. My friends and I are going to a Thai restaurant before the film. Until I speak to you again, be kind to one another. Don't invite any strange pale women into your home after dark, and sleep well, my delicious darlings.